I closed 18K without a single sales call, and I'm going to walk you through all the way from the initiation of the conversation to when they paid 18K on a Stripe link. I will be breaking down every single message in excruciating detail so you can see what I'm thinking and what is going through my mind when I'm sending these messages, applying all the frameworks that I've run through in previous videos. If you've ever been on a sales call and you've got butterflies in your stomach when they're in the waiting room and you've got to let them in, this is for you. Because when you're on a WhatsApp chat with someone, it's like messaging a friend. You don't have to worry about it, and you have that thinking space to know what to say next. The context of this WhatsApp conversation is I didn't want to go through the full transcript because that would take forever. So what I've done is I've taken the key moments and I've enriched them with knowledge and applying the frameworks that I know so that you can see what I'm thinking. Now, in this situation, for privacy purposes, advisor is me and client is the prospect that I'm talking to. And you can see on the screen all the frameworks that I'm applying as I go through. Now, the first message that I sent was, hey client name, I'm really pumped to connect with you soon. Just wanted to quickly double check for our scheduled time. Is this still your correct WhatsApp number so we're all set? Just to confirm that when the meeting comes around and it's the time on the calendar, you're not gonna be faffing around because you got their WhatsApp number wrong or they didn't realize you had a conversation at that time. It just removes the friction from that initial phase. Now, the reason as well that I like to open with this is it's positive. It's framing the chat as exciting and not transactional. Confirming the logistics shows professionalism, but we're also eliciting that first micro yes. It's eliciting that because the point is you want all these micro yeses throughout the conversation because naturally when it comes to asking for the money and you say, hey, would you like to get started? Because they've already been saying yes consistently throughout the conversation, they are more likely to close. This is, like I said, the first small step towards those chain of micro commitments. The frameworks which I'm applying here is the gate one of trust, which is building rapport and reliability. And it's also initiating that first micro yes, which is trust compression. It's making sure that they are ready for this conversation. The client then replies, said, yeah, that's right. Thanks for checking in. I appreciate you making sure everything's lined up. So this is already a good sign because they're already thinking, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. They're confirming that the chat's going ahead and they're ready to go forwards with it. This is always a good sign because your sales process reflects the product. If you have a really bad sales process, they're going to assume that you have a really bad product. You have to maintain the continuity of your brand throughout the entire process from the moment a prospect enters into your ecosystem to the moment they are signed as a client and you have to onboard them. You've got to maintain the continuity of your brand and your image. So I always like to start with building a bit of rapport. So I said, awesome, glad we're all locked in here. How's your day been so far? And this is just a simple rapport builder, shifting from logistics to personal connection. The quicker you can build up a personal connection, the quicker you can get to the sale. This sets me up as a human first rather than salesperson first. That's the key. Because the other thing is, when you're on a sell by chat, you've got to build up trust faster. Because who the hell wants to talk on a chat? Most people want to hop on a call. So you have to prove that you're authentic and that you are actually a real person on the screen. Now, the little nuance that I like to use is I will send someone a selfie of myself at the beginning of the chat, so they know it's actually me talking. Client then said, pretty good, thanks. It's been one of those busy mornings with client calls back to back, but nothing too crazy. Honestly, I'm glad we're doing this now. Curious to see what you've got in mind. Always a good start. So they've kind of had anticipation for this chat, which is always good. You've just got to kind of lean into that now. Why are they excited for the chat? Why do they want to talk to you? And this proves already that your product's validated, they're interested, they want it at this phase of the time. I said, sweet, appreciate you squeezing me in between your calls, and thanks again for filling out the intake form in such detail. That gave me a clear picture already. It means we can keep this short and straight to the point without wasting time. Now, I always like to send a form prior to the chat just to get a bit more context in case you miss anything in that first qualification with them. And sometimes they kind of drop these bombs of what they're actually doing in that moment, which then you can kind of use as ammunition. Hey, I saw you're already using LinkedIn, for example, and I saw that you're not really getting the results you want. Why do you think that is? And then you go into the questions. The breakdown of this is I'm acknowledging their busyness, so I'm showing empathy. I'm thanking them, which is reciprocity, and it frames the call as efficient, or the chat as efficient. This reduces resistance while positioning me as organized. The client said, just so you know how I usually like to run these. So this is me again, sorry, advisor. Just so you know how I usually like to run these, I'll ask a couple of extra questions to fill in any gaps and really get a sense of your goals. Then, if it feels like a good fit on both sides, I'll send you over my offer doc with all the details so you can review. Sound good? The pre-frame of the chat is so important because what you want to say. You want to say something and you want that thing to happen, because that is a way of building up trust. If you say to someone, hey, we're going to be doing this, this, and this in the sales process, just so you know, and then all those things happen in accordance with how you said it, that builds up trust because they know what to expect. Always a good start. As I mentioned, this sets the agenda, pre-frames the offer doc early so it feels natural later. That's also a big key here. If you send them the offer doc midway through the chat and they weren't expecting, they're like, whoa, I'm not ready for the offer yet, I still want to talk about it. So this pre-frames it nicely. Also, again, another micro commitment. You see how throughout the chat, I'm always getting these micro yeses, so that when I ask for the big yes, would you like to get started, yes, they say yes. That's the key. So forces another micro commitment, keeping them engaged in the process. The frameworks which are being applied here is we're already at gate 3 of the 6 gates of trust, and I'm already kind of compressing the trust through those micro commitments, and I'm lubing the chat. Lube value question, I'm lubing it. Yep, that works perfectly. I like that you've got structure in place. That makes me feel more confident. We're not just winging it. Always a good start. When he sent me that, I was like, thank God. So the clients agrees, they've affirmed that they value structure. This tells me they'll respond well to roadmaps and step-by-step systems. So you can already get a tell on what the kind of structure that client or that prospect is looking for in this moment. Because what they want is they want to see that your process is structured so that your product is structured. That's what they're looking for. Now we move into phase 2. Now this is the discovery and finding the motivation of why they actually need your product. So I said, from your form, it's clear you already got strong foundations. What's going to be crucial now is showing proof of value, making sure people really want to see what you deliver and positioning you as authority. But before I get ahead of myself, I'm curious, what actually prompted you to hop on with me today? Why me and why now specifically? Again, I validate their foundation, which is lubing the chat. I add an insight, so adding value. Hey, you need to be an authoritative figure in your space. Then I ask a sharp why me, why now question. This forces urgency and makes them feel self-justified themselves. The client then came back to me and said, honestly, you come across like you know what you're doing more than most. The way you describe your offer feels aligned with what I want. You also seem like a friendly guy, which matters. Plus, you clearly have a growth mindset. You're not just about what works now, but about finding the best way, and the best way changes, which is exactly how I think. So although I'm not actually at the point where I'm trying to get to gate 6 is all about identity. So I can already get a tell now that he matches with my identity of wanting to focus on the future, not just the present. So they're verbalizing why they trust me, competence, friendliness, mindsets. This is self-persuasion. Now, you're not convincing them. They've got to convince themselves, and you're asking them questions so they're constantly convincing themselves that they need your product. This was key for me. In the conversation, I went, this is a really good sign, because they've convinced themselves that they are aligned with the product already. They then followed up with and said, to be upfront, I've got 2 big weaknesses here. 1, I sometimes have a limiting mindset, and 2, I've got 0 experience with LinkedIn. That's why I wanted to shortcut the learning curve by working with someone positive and experienced. So this is already really, really good, for me at least, because they're admitting vulnerability, and you can dig into that and use that as ammunition, which accelerates intimacy and also sets me up perfectly to position myself as the bridge to solving their problem. So imagine their problem's here, there's then a bridge to the solution or to the dream outcome they want. Your solution is what that bridge is. I then said, that makes a lot of sense. I actually do the same thing. If I don't know something, I go straight to a pro. Right now I'm doing that with YouTube. Instead of figuring it out alone, I'm learning from people who've already cracked it. It saves me months of frustrations. Notice how I'm agreeing the whole time. Yeah, you know, you're completely right. I do the same thing. It feeds into the human psychology that if you meet someone and they have the same interests, they do the same things with you, you are more likely to trust them in a very short period of time. So whatever they say, I said, you know what, I'm doing exactly the same thing. You're on the right path. Because if you position yourself as an authoritative figure in the space, they'll be like, oh, thank God, I'm doing the same as this guy. He's the leader. This is great. Always a good start in the conversation. They then came back and said, let me give you some context. I've run a marketing agency for about 20 years. We're small, about 25 people, but we've built a solid reputation. We're purpose-driven, certified B corporate, carbon neutral, gives 5% of gross to non-profits. A bit more complex here, but about a third of our clients are non-profits. We've won multiple Best Places to Work awards, and today we're being featured as one of the most inspiring workplaces in North America. The point is, we're not just chasing money. We're about vision, mission, and values. Now, from this, I can see what his identity is. And so I've got to lean into that. Okay, he cares about vision, he cares about mission, and he cares about his values. I'm now going to show him my values, which comes up later in the conversation, to show that there is a match in our identities and that he is able to resonate with me more. So they've unloaded their credibility and values. This is them self-qualifying and signaling alignment. And the frameworks which are being applied here is gate 2 of the 6 gates of trust, which is authority, and gate 5, which is empathy. And this is compressing the trust because they're already starting to share. That's a really big key. If someone starts to share a lot about their business, it means that they trust you, because that isn't information which they're just going to give away willingly. They want to be able to trust you so they can share that extra bit of detail. I then said, that's incredible, congratulations. Honestly, LinkedIn is perfect for businesses like yourself. It's not a fixed platform. If you can't deliver, it won't work. When you've already got proof of results, it amplifies everything. For example, a client of mine doing X amount, in 6 months, we scaled them to X amount just through LinkedIn. They started with 5K followers and now have 30K positioned as leaders. I am validating their position and framing LinkedIn as leverage. Then I use a case study as social proof, making the result feel replicable. They can replicate it as well. And so the interesting thing here is, you notice how smooth that is that I'm using a case study? It's like, oh, you're already doing this. Hey, this is actually like one of my clients. We also help them do X, Y, Z. This is the key. Again, you're not only aligning their identity with you, you're aligning your identity with your clients you worked with in the past. Because if they say, hey, they're already doing what I want to do, then they're very, very likely to look at you and go, hey, you help them do that, you can help me as well. That's the reaction you want. The client said, that's exactly me. We're at around X amount. Historically, we've grown 20% year on year, but last year we flatlined. The market shifted. What was hot went cold. If we keep doing the same thing, expecting different results, that's just insanity. So this is already a good sign for me because they're sharing a lot now. So they're kind of self-identifying that this may actually be a product for them. And they're also articulating their pain quite well here, which is flat growth. They kind of reached a plateau in their kind of growth. And now you've got to capitalize on that and go, you know what, we're going to get you through that. This is really, really good sign. As it suggests here, they've essentially admitted the need for change. If someone does not have a need for your product, which I went through in the closing sequence video that I did before, they will not buy. It is the most important thing that you've got to identify at the beginning. If a company is already growing, they're already generating leads, and they're already making tons and tons of sales, and you come to them and goes, hey, we're going to help you with lead gen, they don't need your product. They're already doing it. You've got to establish that there is a need. And in this case, there is. I then said, man, you're crushing it. I love how passionate you are about the mission side, not just the numbers. Honestly, I get fired up working with people like that. For me, this isn't just about making money either. My mission has always been bigger, to help 10,000 people make their first dollar online, help 1,000 hit 6 figures and 100 reach 7 figures. For what I see in you, I could easily see you not just reaching 7, but maybe even 8 figures, mainly because of your mindset. Again, I'm agreeing. I use energy and admiration to lift them up, which is lubing the chat. So LVQ, it's lubing the chat. Then I drop my mission, which is the value, which frames me as someone on a bigger path than just sales. Finally, I future pace their success with, can you see yourself here as well? I'm saying to them, I'm painting that dream picture of not just reaching 7, but maybe 8 figures. That's where I want to get them to. I'm painting that dream outcome for them, which is really cool because then he can buy into that throughout the chat. Client then said, brother, I love that and I agree. Perspective and balance are everything. I've been married 15 years. I'm a father of 4, 14, 12, 9 and 5. For me, it's about working to live, not living to work. My why is pretty simple. Work with great people, work for great people, do meaningful work, make a difference, and do it on my own terms. They're sharing about family and values, which is very personal. This is trust at its deepest, not just business. We're not talking about business anywhere. We're talking about personal. And I can give you an example. I was having a conversation with someone and they kind of plateaued as well, that their growth wasn't really growing. And, I said, their goal, I think, was to reach, I think it was $1 million a year at that time. And I said, what would reaching $1 million a year allow you to do differently compared to what you were doing now? And then it shifted. We weren't focusing on business because then she said, well, it would allow me to move out of my flat into my own house. That's a personal thing. And if you can link your product to something personal, not as well as business, that's when you get them, because they want to elevate their lifestyle and your product is a way of elevating that lifestyle. They then said, so yeah, you've definitely established trust in my eyes, and then use a cheeky emoji. What does working together actually look like? So This is key. If you do it right, they notice themselves. I mean, this person is a very high level business owner. Of course, they're going to see this. And then he shifted and said, what does working together look like? But you see how just through micro commitments of saying yes, aligning with their identity, painting the dream picture they want to get to, they get to a point where they go, hey, look, I trust you already. Let's get to the offer. Like, I'm super intrigued. Always a good start. So I then said, which this is phase 3, vision and future pacing. Love that. Before I jump into the details, let me ask you. So at this point, I didn't have enough information yet. I wanted to extract a little bit more and really push into the pain and push into the problem that they have to prove, I already have, but prove again that I can solve it. So I said, where would you like to be in 12 months? Or better yet, where do you think you should be? I asked another client this exact question when we first started, and it set the tone for everything. And that set client that I used in this example was the one that I referred to earlier. So you see when I brought up that case study earlier, I then referred back to it and said, hey, I asked that person the exact same question. He's someone who you want to accomplish the same as them. I asked them this question, that's why I'm asking you. Because in their mind, they're going, oh, well, if he asked them and he's asking me as well, he must think I can also achieve the same result. That's the key. So I delay the pitch and future praise. I use the social proof, which again builds credibility, while I get them to articulate their own vision. People commit harder to what they say themselves. As I mentioned earlier, you don't convince people, people convince themselves. So you've got to get them thinking about what they want to achieve. So client said, great question. Ideally, I like to 10x my following, go from 5K to 50K, and even if I miss that, I'll still be someone remarkable. I want to be on the way to 100K for my brand. More than the numbers though, I want to consistently reach the right audience, growth-minded founders, CEOs, and leaders. I'll have to bypass the middle layers and connect with tier 1 ICP clients directly, not just marketing leaders, but actual decision makers. And ultimately, I want to help others do the same. This is perfect for me. They have laid out their huge vision and have articulated it themselves. And psychologically, what this means is they committed. The scale of ambition also gives me leverage because I can frame my offer again as the bridge to this dream outcome, this, like, people always say, like, sell the destination. He's just given me the destination. I just have to prove that my product's gonna get him there. That's the key. But all of this is happening because of tiny micro commitments and tiny intricacies that I am doing throughout the chat to yield this response from the prospect. It's all very calculated and very structured to get that from the prospect. And so love that. From those goals, I say the single most important thing will be building your brand. Where I worked with my other client, the main focus was on client acquisition. As a byproduct, his brand exploded, and that opened up all the doors you just described. Same thing applies here. Once you have the brand, everything else will fall into place. Followers, ICP, access, positioning as a leader. And by the way, I love the line, also known as marketing. I was referring to like a joke that he made earlier, which basically he was talking about all these different things. He was like, essentially, it's just marketing. I need to get better at marketing. So I was keeping a bit of light humor in that sense. But I simplified the ambition into one lever, which is brand. This is key. A lot of founders, and I'm guilty of this myself, they want to do all these different things and they want to accomplish all these different goals. If you can take those goals and refine it down to one thing that they should focus on, ideally what your product helps with, that allows them to simplify it and also quantify how they're actually going to get there. And once they've quantified the route and the roadmap to getting to their goal, they are more likely to close because your product is suddenly the roadmap to get there. It's the bridge. That's what you want. I then said, look, quick question, to reach that point, what do you think is specifically holding you back right now? What do you need the most in order to hit 50K followers and consistently speak with tier 1 ICP clients? You see how I've just reiterated what he said before? This is also a technique called mirroring. I'm just saying what he said so that it proves to him that not only am I listening, I'm also adding on to that as well. Because you're not on a call with someone and you haven't got all these things like tonality, facial expressions, body language, you haven't got all these physical cues, you've got to provide these cues through methods like mirroring. You've got to show that you're listening. Because like when I'm on a call, I can just maintain eye contact with them, or if you're in person as well, and that proves that I'm listening. On a sell-by chat conversation, you've got to repeat what they say consistently to prove that you are listening to them. So again, this is a gap analysis question. So what is the gap to where they want to get to? Like what is holding you back from getting to 100K followers, from growing 20% year-on-year growth? This in itself gets them to articulate their constraints in their own words, which I can then solve directly. So he said, honestly, structure. I need a structured approach and process, something that breaks down into a daily checklist. We are what we repeatedly do, right? So excellence is just a habit. That's the piece I'm missing, structure and accountability. And if you haven't already guessed, this is now ammunition. I'm going to be using this throughout the conversation to go, hey, this is going to give you structure. Hey, this is going to give you accountability. That is the key. So they've revealed the big gap. And this, as I mentioned, is a perfect setup for me since my offer is literally built around providing this. Now I know it is the perfect time to pounce and I can share the offer doc because they have just quantified what the problem is and where they want to go to. So now I can share the offer doc with them, which guess what? Is a value match. It will match what they've been saying in the conversation because ultimately, if you imagine train tracks like this, train tracks can go either way, right? Throughout this whole conversation, I have been guiding through the train tracks so that eventually at the end they go, hey, look, this is exactly what I need. And so when I share the offer doc with them and it's exactly what they just said they need, they have no reason not to buy. It is purely that. So to give you some extra context, I even invested in a brand strategy with a firm that specializes in thought leadership. I'll send it through to you. And then he shares a doc just to give you a bit more context. So this is them stacking the deck, showing they're serious and invested. They wouldn't be sharing me all these details if they weren't invested. We've all had those conversations with someone where they hardly say anything, their answer is usually one sentence, and you can just tell they're not really interested. However, in this case, they have shared an actual resource with me to give me more context, proving that they already assume that I'm someone that can help, hence why they're providing with more context. This is good. Also, appreciate you sharing that. Honestly, structure is the key here. My co-founder and I have spent months analyzing the data and designing a roadmap for the best way to approach this. It's all about habit building and consistency. That's how you'll get to 50K and beyond. Again, sell the destination, paint the picture, the dream outcome. So I validated their need. Also appreciate you sharing that. Honestly, structure is key here. Remember they said that structure is what they need help with. So I validated their need, which is looming. I added authority. We've done this to help. And frame my system is the answer, which is value. The kind of subcontext of that is you can stop guessing and I've already built this. So one of the things that I think as a founder you don't typically like is not knowing what comes next. It's one of those like kind of fears that a lot of founders have. And if you can show to someone that your product not only has direction, but also a set pathway for them to follow, that's exactly what they're looking for. They want to know exactly what to do in the next few months so that they can just grow their business. That's ultimately the goal. And in this case, I'm giving them the structure to do that, solving the problem that he said was holding him back and giving him kind of setting the destination again. What I then said is, I'm pretty sure at this point I sent the offer, oh no, that's coming up. So I said, I tell you what, I don't usually do this, but I'd be happy to include some one-to-ones in the offer doc I send you. I did the same thing with another client, referring back to a client that I shared earlier, who had a big vision and wanted to hit the ground running. Figured I'd do the same here. Now, this is very subtle, but it is something that you can do. If you know that this person is a very good fit and that they're someone that you really do want to work with, then value stack in the sell by chat conversation. Add value to your offer that they weren't expecting. Because at that point they're like, oh, wow, they're doing this for me personally. It makes them feel special. And it's also very relevant to them because I positioned it here and said, look, I think you need some one-to-one in this situation. And I want to be able to give that to you because I know exactly what you need. I want to help. This is key. So I've added more value to our offer. I said, and then I replied to his previous message and I said, I love that. Here's my offer doc with all the details. Take a look through it. And if it all makes sense to you already, I'll put together a custom offer for us to get started. Now, this psychology that I'm using here is everyone wants a steal. Everyone wants a deal when they go to the supermarket or they go shopping online. It's hence why Black Friday is so popular. Everyone wants this like huge deal. Now, a way that I like to get people to close, again, I cover this in the closing sequence video, is I like to give them a custom offer. I like to go, hey, look, because you mentioned X, Y, Z, I'm going to be giving you a custom offer tailored to you. And on their side, it feels more bespoke. You actually listen to them and you've crafted something relevant to them specifically. That is another way of increasing the likelihood of them closing. So this is the formal presentation moment. I drop the link confidently, but without pressure. The if it makes sense keeps it low stakes while the custom offer has exclusivity. Tripping over my words. The frameworks I'm applying now is the closing sequence, which I ran through in the previous video. I'm also doing trust compression because it's a smooth transition. I've established a rapport. I've walked them through 4 of the gates already by this point, maybe even 5, and of the 6 gates of trust. And I've compressed the trust in a very short time. You see how we've gone from the beginning of the conversation all the way to here. How much trust has been built up? This conversation in total was an hour. That's how powerful it can be if you're walking through the right steps in the sell by chat conversation. I then followed up and said, have a read now. I'm just going to check on something quickly. Pin me once you've looked it over and let me know which option you're leaning more towards. Breakdown, pattern interrupt. Instead of overselling, I step back and give them space. This creates psychological relief and positions me as confident. So an example of this might be, hey, have a read through of the offer doc now. I'm going to go grab a bite from the kitchen while you do. I'll come back in 5 minutes or so. Just let me know once you've finished. It's just giving them that breathing space, and it's like, hey, there isn't loads of pressure on this. It just feels subtle and very, very calm, which is exactly what you want. People don't buy in a high stress situation. You want to just remove the friction by letting them read through in their own time. Then we move on to objection handling, which is phase 5 of the conversation. So he read through and said, okay, so here's where I'm at. I've read through the offer doc and I'm in. Always a good sign, however. I definitely want to do the one-to-one option. The only issue is my VP sees me drop 25K up front. She's going to lose it. I see the value and I don't want to disrespect the fact that you're offering one-to-one, which is exactly what I want. I'm just wondering, is there any flexibility on how we structure the payments? Now, I'm not asking for an arbitrary discount. I believe in paying for value. I'm just thinking, what can I give you in return? 110% commitment, responsiveness, referrals, making sure your investment in me creates a massive ROI. Hopefully even inspiring you in new ways through the partnership. You don't get what you don't ask for. So this is me asking. And then he sent like a little wink emoji. So breakdown here is, this is a classic logistical objection, not a value objection. They see the value in your product. It's purely just the structure of the payments, or it's the actual like way of paying for it that they just don't yet align with. They've already said that I'm in. The objection is optics and payment structure. Importantly, they reframe it respectfully, promising commitment and referrals in return. This is trust and desire talking. So they're at gate 6. I've walked them through from gate 1 all the way to gate 6 in the conversation. They are committed. They are ready to get started. It's purely just one blocker, which is the payment structure. Now, in this case, I said, I completely appreciate your honesty. And honestly, I'd love to do one-to-one with you because I can already see how committed you are. You make a killer case study. My original plan was actually to do 6 months access to the program, so 4 months free, but here's what I can do. Option 1, split the payments over 6 months so it's not all up front. This comes back to, actually, I've got the book here. If any of you know Alex Mosey, he wrote a book called $100 Million Money Models. Now, one of the things in that is you can split the payments up. You don't give a discount, you just change the structure of the payments. And this is a way of making sure that as many people as possible pay, but also it means that you're actually still getting paid. It's just, it's nicer for them on their side. That's the cool thing. Because on the client side, like, oh, I really appreciate that, which is good. Option 2 that I gave them was, tell me what's realistic for you, and I can see how many one-to-one sessions I can pack in. Which feels better for you? So I ran through ACA. I acknowledged them. Thank you for your honesty. I complimented them in terms of like their commitment. And I was like, thank you. And then I asked them to choose an option. Instead of lowering value, I reframed the terms. I gave them 2 options. I let them feel in control while I keep my authority. Client said, thank you, that means a lot. I actually didn't notice 6 months access at first. That's really generous. Both your options are also generous and well structured. I think spreading out the payments would make the most sense. Humble question for you. Knowing what you know about me, which option do you think best serves and helps me hit my goals fastest? Now this was very well thought out from my side. And this actually derives from Rory Sutherland. He's a very, very famous marketer, and he always goes into the psychology. But when you give a personal recommendation, you want to do something that feels unique and special. And in a way, not discounting the product, but maybe saying, you know what, you don't need this bit. And to them, again, it builds up so much trust. The example that Rory Sutherland used is there was a guy who went into McLaren and he wanted to buy, I think it was a McLaren P1 at the time. And they were speccing the P1 in the showroom, and the guy was like, hey, do I need carbon ceramic brakes? And the salesman looked at him and went, you know what, are you planning to track this pretty much most of the time? Go on the track, race it. And they said, no, pretty much I'm going to be driving this around in the countryside most of the time. I said, look, let me save you £50,000. You don't need the carbon ceramic brakes. And that person closed because you gave a recommendation which actually removes the amount of money that you're taking. And so they're instantly thinking, wow, this person really cares about me. They're willing to tell me what to do in the best interest for myself than actually suggesting something where they get more money. This is what I did here. So I said, great question. Honestly, I think a 4 times 75-minute one-to-one session will be more than enough. Here's what I suggest. First 2 sessions, just you and I laying out the structure and starting out on the execution. Next 2 sessions, bring your team in so everyone's aligned. That way you get clarity and momentum and your team gets integrated too. Combine that with the 6 months access to the program and you'll be covered on both structure and accountability. Payment structure, 4 times 4, 6, 4, 8. Months 1 to 4 and then months 5 and 6 are free. How does that sound? So I became really specific and structured with the actual payment structure. And this reduced anxiety for them. I framed the offer as more than enough for their needs while anchoring the payment plan as reasonable and clear. I also future-proofs momentum and team integration. I'm showing them that I'm a partner with them for a while. This isn't just a pay and then we're just gonna, do a couple of things and that's it. I wanna help them go through this whole journey of growing their business together. The client said, that actually sounds perfect. I'm in, let's go, be great. So short, decisive and emotional, they're fully committed. So I was like, legend, I'm super pumped to work with you. Here's your custom payment link. What are you most looking forward to once you get started? So I celebrate the decision, high energy. So on a call, obviously your tonality would increase. You'd maybe talk a bit quicker. You show your excitement. I've got to try and do that on a sell by chat conversation. So I celebrate the decision, drop the link smoothly, assumptive close, and follow with a future focused emotional question. What are you most looking forward to? At the moment, imagine a wave goes like this and then it crashes down. They are at the top of this emotional wave. They're on this emotional high. And to grow that wave even higher, you want to say, what are you most looking forward to? Like, what can't you wait to get started with? Just so they are emotionally bought in as well. The client then came back and said, paid, fist bump, emoji, let's do this. And they had just paid into Stripe, perfect. And the fist bump emoji shows energy and camaraderie, I think that's how you pronounce it. This is not just a transaction, it's a partnership. I don't know why I'm tripping over my words again. So I said, yes, pump for it. Just messaged my EA to get you booked in for the first one-to-one. In the meantime, head to one-on-one section and what's critical, start here and introduce yourself to the group. Then we'll dive into strategy on our call. So I immediately transitioned from the sale to delivery / onboarding. So I'm making sure the process is smooth and I'm telling him exactly what to do next. Again, giving him that structure that he wanted. Reinforcing trust and avoiding second guessing. Clear next steps reduces friction. Perfect, it's from the client. Perfect, will do. Already watched the start here video and I introduce myself now. I'll pump for the one-to-one. And that is it. They paid. Now, obviously your process of onboarding is very different to what mine might be. And you just take them through and you've just, congratulations, signed your first client. That is the entire conversation from start till finish of exactly what was said to close an 18K deal in sell by chat. To give a holistic overview, this deal was a textbook example of sell by chat done right. LVQ, Lou Value Question, that's the framework that I was using, it formed the backbone. Every advisor message, me, eased the flow, added value, and ended with a forward driving question. You always want it like the train tracks, guide them towards the destination. ACA, which stands for Acknowledge, Compliment, Ask, showed up strongest in objection handling. Instead of lowering value, I reframed terms, preserved authority, and guided them to the decision. Throughout the entire conversation, I walked them through the 6 gates of trust, building up rapport, positioning my authority, showing the proof of the case study, showing empathy, showing that I aligned to their identity, giving them structure, this is what's going to happen next, and then it got to them committing at the end. Now, trust compression, how did I compress the trust into such a short period of time? Remember, this chat was an hour from start to finish. How I did that was engineered through micro yeses, vulnerability mirroring, proof, and values alignment. This collapsed the usual sales cycle from weeks to one chat. Most of the time, if you're closing an 18.6K deal, that's going to take you a week, maybe two. But through this very, very specific intricacies in the chat, I was able to get that happen. Was able to make that happen in 1 hour. The closing sequence unfolded seamlessly, pre-framed it, used social proof, went through the terms, handled the objections, assumptive close, sent the link, they onboarded. The result, an 18.6K deal was closed entirely in chat with no call, with the client excited, not only paying, but excited, aligned, and already future pacing their success. And that is it. The key lessons that I wanted to run through, and again, that wasn't the full transcript, by the way. It was a long chat, but what you got to remember is we're going through this very, very quickly. The key lessons here is micro yeses matter. The small confirmations of, is this your WhatsApp? Yes, compounded to bigger commitments later throughout the whole chat. Hey, do you agree with me? Hey, I agree with you as well. This works. LVQ is the backgrounds I went through. Future pace before you pitch, get them to articulate their own vision, then position your offer as the bridge to that vision. Objections are just opportunities. Use the framework ACA, acknowledge, compliment, ask, never reduce value, just restructure. Again, what is run through in $100 million money models. Trust compression is real. Vulnerability, proof, and alignment can collapse weeks of trust building into one conversation. The close doesn't end at the payment. This is so key. Smooth onboarding keeps momentum and prevents buyer's remorse. When someone pays, that is actually probably the most important part of the sale. I have had instances in other companies where a person paid, they saw the product, and it didn't align with what they thought it was. And that person ended up having to be refunded. You have to make sure that when they pay, you say, look, this is exactly what's going to happen next. I'm going to refer you to Becky, who's in our onboarding team. They're going to then jump on a call with you and they're going to walk you through exactly what the next 6 months together are going to look like. Then we're going to get our one-to-one session booked in together and I'm going to put that on your calendar. How does that sound? Sounds good, cool. And then those exact steps happen. It builds up the trust and it keeps the momentum of the sale. Hopefully that was valuable. I tried to keep it as brief as possible, but honestly, I wanted to go into as much detail as possible so you could see the entire chat from the start all the way to the finish so that you yourself can go out there and close an 18K deal on a WhatsApp chat. I will see you in the next video.